Okay, let's get started. Let's do a small grounding before we begin. If I can request all to put your phones on silent mode, please. I'm putting mine on Do Not Disturb. Let's find our feet on the floor. Sense if your back is straight, chin parallel to the floor. And then you can close your eyes if you are comfortable. If not, you can just lower your gaze and bring your attention to your breathing. Just become aware of how you're breathing today. And the intention here is to bring our attention to the present moment, using the breath as an anchor. If your mind wanders, bring it back to the breathing. And now let's synchronize our breathing. Let's all breathe together and breathe out together. Let's breathe in and let go. One more time, breathing in and releasing. Come back to normal breathing. And let's take a moment to connect with the intention for this session. What makes you join this webinar today? Slowly come back to your breathing. Become aware of where you are seated. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, welcome everyone. This is a small webinar on Indian festivals, the logic on the astronomy behind Indian festivals. You may have wondered why the date changes every year of these important festivals, or how is it that the same festival gets celebrated under so many different names across, the Asian subcontinent. Some of these festivals, it's not just India, it's across several countries in Southeast Asia that the same festival gets celebrated. So what I want to do over the next hour or so is to introduce you to the South Indian chart, the South Indian Vedic Astrology chart, and use that to explain how these festivals get determined. Yeah, it's almost like an introduction to the Indian calendar, to the Hindu Vedic calendar, keeping festivals in mind. I'm going to share my screen. Just let me know if you can see my screen. This session is being recorded. I'll be putting this up on YouTube, and you can always watch the recording later. I'm sharing my screen. Can you give me an indication? Yeah, that the screen is being, yeah. Okay, so let's get right to it. Now, this is the astronomy behind the festival. So we need to do a little bit of astronomy. Yeah? And if you're okay, can I request you to open your videos, please, so then we can connect? Thank you. Yeah. All right, let's take a look at this. Now, starting from the very basics, we have the stars in the sky. And we have Earth below. Right? Now, if we take any particular day, and for this webinar, I took 29th March. On that day, the sun would be placed somewhere in the sky. Okay? On that particular day, the moon was almost directly in front of the sun. Yeah? It was a new moon day. When the moon is directly in front, we can't see the moon from Earth because the sun is lighting up the moon, the backside of the moon. So we don't see the moon over here, right? So we call it as a new moon day, a new moon, a no moon, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But what we have to keep in mind are the stars behind the moon on that day, right? So if we draw a line from us on Earth to the moon and then to the sun, and then extend it out, we reach certain stars in the sky, right? In this case, they are the stars in red. Right? These stars are very important for determining the festivals, right? Or determining what month it is. These stars are known as the nakshatras. Nakshatra is the Sanskrit term for star. Right? And Amavasya is no moon. It's the Sanskrit word from the next day, the moon travels a bit, a lot more than the sun. And then the first phase of the moon begins. Now, when the moon completes 12 degrees from the sun, we say one phase of the moon is completed. Right? And that phase of the moon is known as Tithi. Yeah? And it is 12 degrees. The sun also moves, but the moon travels faster than the sun, right? So we need to keep track of both the sun and the moon. And when the difference becomes 12 degrees or multiples of 12, we have a different tithi, right? Now, this is the first tithi after the new moon. But now notice what has happened to the stars behind the moon. They have changed, right? The next day, on the 1st of April, the moon again travels. And when that difference becomes another 12 degrees, so it's 24 degrees from the sun, we complete two tithis. And this is known as Dvitiya, which is the Sanskrit word for the second. And now again, the stars behind the moon have changed. And this goes on, right? Now, this is on the 2nd of April, and this is the third day after the new moon, and the stars again changed. Why am I sharing this? Because the Indian calendar, the Vedic calendar, is based on the position of the sun and the position of the moon. It's a luni-solar calendar. The Islamic calendar, on the other hand, is a purely lunar-based calendar. We don't take the position of the sun in the Islamic calendar. It's only the position of the moon. But here, if you look at this illustration, when I say 1, 2, and 3, that depends on where the sun is. Without the sun, you cannot have the tithis, the phases of the moon. So our calendar is a luni-solar calendar. First. Second, we have 12 lunar months or luni-solar months, right, to be more precise. based on the nakshatras behind the moon, the stars behind the moon. Let me explain that a little more. We can say that a new month begins on every new moon. In such a case, the calendar we follow is known as Amasya Vanta calendar. Amavasya Anta calendar. When Amavasya happens, a new month begins. This is mostly followed in South India. But we can also say a new month begins at a full moon. We can start a new month anytime. In the Vedic times, a month began with the full moon. And that calendar is known as a Purnimanta calendar. Purnima is full moon. Anta meaning completion. Right? So when the full moon completes, a new month begins. This is known as the Purnimanta calendar. This is mostly followed in North India, but it's the more prevalent calendar, right? And this is the more ancient calendar. So I'll be using the Purnimanta calendar in this webinar, right, to explain the festivals. Now, the month is named after the stars behind the moon when it's either new or full. If you look at the stars in this diagram, in this illustration, you'll see 4 sets of red stars, right? All the stars have names. But where the full moon happens, the month takes its name from those stars. Let me explain the same thing in a slightly different manner. Let's take only the stars and start zooming out, well, flying above the Earth, right? Above the North Pole. Keep flying out. Keep flying out. Even more, you'll see that our zodiac is a circle, right? This, I'm seeing it right from the top, right? Earth is in the center. It's an aerial view of the stars around the Earth. Yeah? These stars are what we divide into different number of divisions. Traditionally speaking, they are divided into 12 divisions, the 12 signs of the zodiac. Those 12 signs in the South Indian format are in a square. Over here, there are 12 boxes. It's in a square format, but it's actually representing the circle, the zodiac, the circle of stars. Okay? And these boxes have names: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. The 12 signs of the zodiac. These are stars far away, extremely far away from Earth. What are much closer to Earth are the planets. We have the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn. And then we have 2 mathematical points called Rahu and Ketu. We'll get into it at another time. But these are what we call as the 9 grahas, the Nava grahas of Vedic astrology. Now, these are very close to Earth. And these grahas, they go around the zodiac. You know, very basic astronomy. We can go into it in much more detail in class. But for now, just know that our calendar uses only the sun and moon. It's a luni-solar calendar. Some festivals use other planets, but the majority of festivals are using only the positions of the sun and moon. Now, let's take the sun. The sun goes, the stars behind the sun keep changing because the Earth is going around the sun, and it changes. It can be anything of these stars that we see, Aries, Taurus. Let's say, for instance, the sun is Taurus. That means the stars behind the sun are the stars of Taurus. The second planet here is the moon, which can be anything. It can be in any of these signs. let's say the moon is also in Taurus. That means the moon is in front of the sun, which means this is a new moon, Amavasya. Right? The moon goes around the zodiac, in this case, in the clockwise direction. The moon goes faster than the sun. Now, this, as it goes ahead of the sun, it is the waxing moon, the Shukla Paksha, where the moon keeps increasing in size. Every 12 degrees, you have a different tithi as it goes further and further from the sun. When the moon comes directly opposite to the sun, you have the full moon. It's directly opposite. But the moon doesn't stop there. It keeps going back. And here, the moon is in waning mode. And this is known as Krishna Paksha. Paksha meaning fortnight. So Shukla meaning the bright half. Krishna meaning the dark half, the dark fortnight. We can take another example. If the sun is in Gemini, this is the waxing fortnight. When the moon is directly opposite to the sun, it is full moon. This is the waning moon. And this is Krishna Paksha. Any questions? Am I going too fast or this is okay? This is okay? All right. Now, the zodiac, we have divided it into 12 divisions. In Vedic astrology, the same stars we divide into 27. The nakshatras. Finer divisions of the same zodiac. Yeah? Of these 27, they are grouped into 9, 9, and 9, 3 groups of 9 stars each. Of these 27, 12 of them have been chosen for naming the months. So if we take over here, the first one is Ashwini. So when the full moon happens in the nakshatra of Ashwini, a new masa, a new month begins. It's known as Ashwini Masa. Ashwin Masa. Masa meaning month. The next full moon will happen in Kritika, and that is known as Kartika Masa. There are 12 such masas. And generally speaking, we believe that the masas begin with Chitra, which is in the middle portion over here. And that is known as Chaitra Masa. Right? So these are the 12 masas: Chaitra, Vaishakha, Jeshta, Ashada, Shravana, Bhadrapada, Ashwin, Kartika, Margashirsha, Pausha, Magha, and Falguna. And they are named after the stars behind the moon when it is full. So if you take Chaitra Masa, that means full moon happens in Chitra Nakshatra, which is in the constellation of Virgo. Vaishakha happens in Vishakha Nakshatra in the constellation of Libra. Right? And so on. If we want to correlate this with our English Gregorian calendar, approximately these are the months when these masas begin. Masa is the lunisolar month. Right? 2 of these months are combined to form a season called a Rutu. So we have Vasanta, Grishma, Varsha, Sharad, Hemant, and Shishira. Right? Now, the Rutus play a huge role in Ayurveda, for instance. The diet is supposed to change with the Rutu. But for festivals, for Indian festivals, we don't really look at Rutu. We are looking mostly, almost all Indian festivals consider the position of only the sun and the moon and or another planet. But what about the sun and moon? There are four things: the masa, the month; paksha, whether it is waxing or waning; tithi, the phase of the moon; and nakshatra, the stars behind the moon. Of these, this is what is most prevalent. Considering only these three, the date of a festival is determined in majority of the cases. There are some festivals where we take only the sun into account, not the moon, right? But we don't have any festival where we take only the moon into account. I've not come across such a festival, right? But let's look at the sun, a festival where only the position of the sun is concerned. And it's celebrated across India. It's one of the most important festivals we have, called Makar Shankranti. Right? It goes by many names. It's known as Lohri in Punjab. It's known as Uttarayani in Uttarakhand. But Makar Shankranti, Mage Shankranti, different ways of pronouncing the same thing. Makar Shankranti. Makar meaning crocodile. Crocodile is the traditional symbol for Capricorn. Shankranti means to enter. So Makar Shankranti is when the sun enters the sign of the crocodile. When the sun enters Capricorn. When the stars behind the sun become the stars of Capricorn. That means in this South Indian chart, Capricorn, if you see over here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, CAP, Capricorn, the sun has to be there. When the sun comes into that box is when you have Makar Shankranti. Right? And that happens on the 14th of Jan. 14th of Jan 2026, this is how the planets are placed. But none of those planets matter. It's only the position of the sun. Yeah. There's another festival where we consider only the position of the sun. And that is known as Puthandu. It's a Tamil New Year. And this happens when the sun enters Aries. When the sun starts a new cycle around the zodiac. That means the sun has to be in Aries. It does not matter where any of the other planets are. When the sun enters Aries, a new year begins. Right? And this is happening on the 14th of April. Yeah? Very important day. Financial transactions, for instance, are initiated after the sun enters Aries. Right? Aries is a cardinal sign. It is a yang sign. Yeah? It's a fire sign. So it's all about going outward with full of energy and enthusiasm into this world. And that's where the sun is starting its journey, according to the Tamil New Year. There are many other festivals based only on the position of the sun. Take Christmas, for instance. Happens on the 24th night every year. 25th is the day of Christmas. 24th night is Christmas Eve, based on the position of the sun. Okay? And somewhere it may be linked to the equinox or the solstice. The winter solstice happens on December 23rd. Okay? Based only on the declination of the sun in that case. Over here, with Puthandu, it's based on the longitude of the sun, not the declination. Yeah? But we are going into intricacies of astronomy. We can keep that for a later time. Let's look at festivals where both the sun and the moon are considered. Shivratri, right? One of the most important festivals we have, the great night of Shiva. It is said to be when he dances. Some legends say this is when Shiva and Parvati unite. Some legends say this is when he consumed the poison that emerged from the churning of the ocean. Different legends, right? But it's the night of Shiva. When I was growing up, I was told that if you stay awake on Shivratri, all your sins will be pardoned. Right? And I've tried very hard, but not managed. Not managed to stay awake. So that's still something left to do. Maybe accumulate sins first and then stay awake. I don't know. Mahashivratri, this happens in Krishna Paksha Chaturdashi in Falguna Masa. Right? So the Masa is Falguna. Falguna comes from Purva Falguni Nakshatra, which is in Leo. That means the sun, any ideas where the sun should be placed if it has to be Falguna Masa?
In the Falgun zodiac sign?
So then you would be considering the South Indian calendar called Amavasya Anta. But in the North Indian format, we need the full moon. So the full moon has to happen in Falguna Nakshatra. Right? If the moon has to be full in Purva Falguni, the sun has to be directly opposite to it. Right? So Falguni Nakshatra, Purva Falguni is in Leo constellation. That means the sun has to be in Aquarius. And the moon has to be in Falguni at full moon. That is when the Masa ends. But here we are speaking of Krishna Paksha. Krishna Paksha meaning the waning half.
Waning, yes.
And it's Chaturdashi, the 14th. So it's just before the no moon. It's just before the moon conjoins with the sun. So over here, if you see, the moon is before the sun. Any Shivratri you take, you will find the moon before the sun. And it has to be somewhere like this. Sun in Aquarius, moon in Capricorn. And in the next Shivratri happens 15-16, that night of 15th February 26. This is how the planets will be placed. And very interestingly, we have a big conjunction in Aquarius around that time, the sign that rebels, the sign that challenges conventions. And that is what Shiva is also known for. So it's going to be a very powerful Shivratri. Yeah. Let's look at one more, which happens in almost, the start of a new cycle. This is Ugadi, also known as Gudi Padwa in Maharashtra, Baishakhi or Bihu, but Ugadi in South India. Now, this is the start of the new year for us in Bangalore. In Karnataka, we consider Ugadi to be the real start of the new year, not January 1st, not April 14th, right? Ugadi happens in Shukla Paksha, Shukla meaning the bright half, Prathama Pada meaning the first phase, when the moon just goes ahead of the sun, in Chaitra Masa. Chaitra comes from the nakshatra called Chitra, Chitra Nakshatra, which is in Virgo. That's the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. This is where Chitra Nakshatra is. So where should the sun be for Ugadi?
Libra?
That's in the South Indian calendar.
Okay.
Pisces. Because You want the full moon to happen in Chitra Nakshatra. That means the sun has to be directly opposite to it. But this festival, that's how the month is named. But the festival happens when the moon just goes ahead of the sun. So the moon is ahead of the sun in Pisces. The first phase, when the first phase begins, is when Ugadi happens. Right? And for those of us who know astrology, Pisces is considered the most spiritual of all signs. So what we are saying here is the start of a new spiritual cycle. You know, in the Vedic calendar, we have 60 samvatsaras. Every year has a name, and it's a cycle of 60 years. The year changes. We get a new name for the year when Ugadi happens. In 26, again, we will have a few planets there. Right now, we have several planets in Pisces, and that will continue. It will be the case next year as well. Let's look at one more. Any guesses which festival this is? Holi? No, no, because of the colors. Yeah, maybe I should not have used the colors. It's Guru Purnima. Guru Purnima. Guru means teacher, and Purnima meaning full. Guru Purnima, this is the birth of, it's celebrated as the birth of Ved Vyasa, but different traditions celebrate this festival for different purposes. For instance, in Buddhism, this is celebrated as the day when the Buddha gave the first sermon, right? Guru Purnima. We are perpetuating our gurus, right? Our teachers. And this happens in Ashada Purnima. Ashada is the name of the month. Purnima is full. So it happens on the full moon when the moon is in Purvashada Nakshatra. Purvashada is in Sagittarius. So it's a full moon. So that means the sun has to be directly opposite. Look how interesting this combination is. Gemini is the sign of knowledge. The sun is the self. The self is placed in the sign of knowledge. Moon is the mind. The sun is shining all its light on the mind. And that mind is placed in the sign of Sagittarius, the sign of the centaur. The centaur who teaches Achilles how to fight. The centaur who taught Hercules his source of strength. Look, such a powerful combination. And this was the time when Vyasa took birth, right? You can imagine, what a great soul he must have been. This is how the planets are placed in the next Guru Purnima. That's around 10th of July, 25. Here's another festival. I'm sure you will guess which festival this is.
Navratri.
Yep, Navratri. Yeah. And the interesting thing I learned about Navratri when I was researching for this webinar is that there are 4 Navratris. I think we all knew that, but did we know that each yuga celebrates a different Navratri? What was celebrated in Satya Yuga is a different Navratri than what was celebrated in Treta Yuga or in Dwapar Yuga. And in Kali Yuga, we celebrate the most important Navratri is in the month of Ashwin, right? So it is Shukla Paksha Pratima, Shukla meaning the bright half, Pratima is the start, the first phase, to Navami. Navami is the ninth. So the 9 days in the bright half of Ashwin Masa is what is celebrated in Kali Yuga. Ashwin Masa means the full moon has to happen in Ashwini Nakshatra. Yeah? Ashwini Nakshatra is in Aries. Right? So that means the sun has to be directly opposite. So at the end of Virgo or in the beginning of Libra, it will be somewhere there. And then it is 9 days in the bright half. Right? So this is when it begins. And it goes on till the 9th day. And 22nd to 30th September, this is how the planets are placed. So Navratri is each day a different goddess is celebrated. There are 9 goddesses, and it is basically about how goddess Durga kills Mahishasura. And the interesting thing is the 10th day after Navratri is celebrated as Vijayadashami, which is also, according to legend, when Rama defeated Ravana. So there are different legends about Vijayadashami. Some say it is when Durga kills Mahishasura, and some legends say it is the defeat of Ravana at the hands of Rama. So this is also Shukla Paksha on the bright half, but it's Dashami. Dashami meaning the 10th day in Ashwin Masa. So the sun is still over there itself in Virgo, but the moon has traveled, right? It has traveled 10 times 12, almost 120 degrees from the sun.
I was curious. So, Makar Sankranti, the entry of Sun in Capricorn is celebrated as New Year. Then entry of Sun in I'm forgetting Ugadi. I think it was April is also New Year. So why is that?
Yeah,
Why different regions celebrate New Year with different Sun entering in a different zodiac
great
sign?
question. Great question. So Shankranti, Makar Shankranti, in ancient times, in Vedic times, was when the sun started its journey to the north.
Hmm.
It's known as Uttarayana.
Correct, correct.
Ugadi is when the first phase happens in Pisces. So it's
Hmm.
like saying the start of a new spiritual cycle.
Hmm.
Putundu is when the sun enters Aries. So when the sun starts a new cycle around the zodiac. Each of these have different significance, right?
Hmm.
So one is a spiritual significance, one is a material significance, one is
Hmm.
an increase in outward energy.
Hmm.
So there are many regions that celebrate the new year when Jupiter changes signs, right? Jupiter takes approximately a year in each sign, and when Jupiter changes signs, it's said to be a new year.
Hmm.
It's just, I feel it's society, humanity's way of marking time and
What?
different ways of marking time. It's like saying landmarks, right? So if I'm driving from here to, I don't know, someplace, I have a certain building as a landmark and the next building as a landmark.
Hmm.
But you may have a certain tree as a landmark and another tree as another landmark. It's
Right,
just demarcating the journey.
right. Thank you. That's insightful.
I have 4, 5 more festivals. So let's do this and then I'll take some more questions. Any guesses about this festival?
Nag Panchami. Yeah.
Nag Panchami. Nag Panchami. Nag meaning snake, serpents. Panchami meaning fifth, right? Fifth. So this is the worship of snakes. And there are supposed to be 12 important serpents, and we know two of them, right? We know Adishesha, right, which Vishnu rests on, or we know about Vasuki, which is around Shiva's neck. Right? This is Shukla Paksha, so it's in the bright half. Panchami, the fifth day in the bright half in Shravana Masa. Right? Shravana is in Capricorn. So in this case, the sun has to be directly opposite in Cancer. Fifth day, so the moon is somewhere around 5 times 12, 60 degrees from the sun, so somewhere in Virgo. Right? In this case, 29th July, this is how the planets are placed. So what I'm highlighting by using the South Indian chart is giving you a sense of orienting you to how the chart is. So then when you look at your own birth chart, you'll get a sense of where the moon is placed, how far it is from the sun. You know? Highlighting the tithi and the masa, which all Vedic birth charts will mention. Right? Certain masas have many more festivals than other masas. So just kind of giving you an orientation, right? Some of these festivals are so important that they are celebrated every month. Ganesh Chaturthi, for instance, right? Every Chaturthi is known as Vinayak Chaturthi, right? It is that important. Chaturthi, meaning the fourth day in Shukla Paksha. That means the fourth day after the new moon is very auspicious, for removing obstacles, which is what Ganesha represents for us. Right now, this is in Bhadrapada Masa. Bhadrapada is Purva Bhadrapada, which is in Aquarius. So sun will be directly opposite in Leo. And 4 days, right? So 4 times 12, around 48 degrees from the sun. So moon will be in Virgo. Each of these signs is 30 degrees. Right? 30 times 12 is 360. In this case, this is how the other planets are placed. Right? All the other planets can keep moving around wherever they want, but when the sun and moon come into certain combinations, a festival happens. And that combination is what makes the day very auspicious. Right? So when we do muhurta, for instance, when we fix auspicious times and dates for certain events, we are looking at these combinations. So Chaturthi becomes very auspicious. Right? You can remove obstacles with whatever you take up on such a day. That's the idea behind this tithi. We also have Ram Navami, very auspicious. Navami, very auspicious any month in any masa. Right? Now, this is also in Shukla Paksha, so in the bright half. So 9 days after the new moon, right, becomes Navami. Now, this is in Chaitra Masa. Chitra Nakshatra, if you remember, is in Virgo. So sun has to be directly opposite. Right? Now, we just finished, so I've given the date over here for the next year, 27th March, 26. 9th day, so 9 times 12, 108 degrees from the sun. It'll be approximately in Cancer, the moon. Right? Based on only the sun and moon, all these festivals are determined. This is Vaikunta Ekadashi. This is when Vishnu and Yogamaya kills Murasura, according to one legend. Another legend says this is when Vishnu opens the gate to Vaikunta. Vaikunta is where he resides. So many temples, Tirupati, for instance, Balaji, many temples, they have a door that they open on Vaikuntha Ekadashi. According to this legend, Vishnu allows two asuras to enter Vaikuntha, right, on that day. So the idea being that all of us have access to the highest realms on this day. Yeah. This happens on Shukla Paksha Ekadashi in Pausha Masa. Pausha comes from the nakshatra called Pushya. Pushya nakshatra is in Gemini. So when the sun is directly opposite is when this month begins. And this is in Ekadashi. So Ekadashi is 11. 11 times 12 is 132. So the moon will be somewhere in Aries. Yeah. And 31st December, this time it happens on the last day of the year. It makes the New Year celebration that much more beautiful for us because the gates to Vaikuntha are opening up. I think it's about time. Any guesses which one this is?
Krishna Janmashtami?
Krishna Janmashtami. Krishna is the Lord, Lord Krishna. Janma Ashtami. So birth, Janma is birth, Ashtami is the eighth Tithi. So Krishna Paksha Ashtami, the 8th day after the full moon, right, in Bhadrapada Masa. For Krishna's birthday, many people consider the nakshatra also. It's very difficult for both to happen, right? Ashtami and Rohini nakshatra, very rare combination. So it's usually Ashtami is what is considered. And generally there are each tradition uses a slightly different method to determine the exact day. So for instance, ISKCON has its own way of determining this, and they are usually a little away from several other Vedic traditions. But generally speaking, 16th August this year, some say 15th August. If it's 15th, it's even more interesting for us because it's our Independence Day in India. Bhadrapada, which happens in Purva Bhadrapada is in Sagittarius, so the sun should be directly opposite. So early Cancer is where the sun will be in this case, or in Gemini, somewhere there. And this is in Krishna Paksha, so it's the waning half. So the moon will be in Aries this time. Ashtami, so the 8th day after the full moon. Do you know this festival? I'll give you a hint. This is celebrated as Halloween in the West.
Kali Chaudash?
I've not heard of that. Maybe it's a different name for the same festival. We call it as Pitru Paksh. Have you heard this? Pitru Paksh. It's
No.
when we honor our ancestors. It struck me this time that it happens around the same time as Halloween, where the West is celebrating ghosts, otherworldly spirits. And for us, we honor our ancestors. Pitru is father, forefathers. Paksh is fortnight. So the fortnight which we dedicate to our ancestors to give thanks to our ancestors. So it happens for 15 days in Ashwina Masa. Ashwina is the stars of Ashwini, and it happens for 15 days across the fortnight. Yes, Anmol, just before Sharad Navratri and Diwali. And in fact, that is what I have as the next festival, which is Diwali. Right? Diwali comes after we have Pitru Paksh. And this is Amavasya of Kartika Masa. Amavasya meaning the new moon in Kartika Masa. Right? The stars of Kartika, Kritika, are in Aries, so sun is directly opposite. And it is Amavasya, meaning the moon is just behind the sun, merging with the sun. So the moon over here is in Virgo in this year. And that's how the other planets are placed. Right? Now, all of these, we don't consider the ascendant per se, but when you want to perform a ritual or visit a temple, we look at the muhurta, and for that, the ascendant plays a very big role. Right? Otherwise, the whole day is considered auspicious. Now, all these festivals so far was considering the sun and the moon. Here's a very different festival, which is from the Tamil calendar, not the Vedic calendar, but the Tamil calendar. Any idea which one this is? This is Onam. Right? Onam is said to be when the king Bali comes back to meet his subjects. Right? Bali is an asura who is granted this boon by Vishnu, by Vamana, to come and meet his subjects, and it happens every year. This festival happens when sun is in Leo and the moon is in Shravana Nakshatra. Sun in Leo, so the sun has to be in that box, and moon has to be in a nakshatra called Shravana. So this combination is when Bali comes back. So all these festivals are determined by looking at the stars and looking at where the sun, what stars are behind the sun on a certain day, what stars are behind the moon. This made a lot of headlines this year. Right?
Mahakumbh.
Kumbh Mela. Right? And here are the conditions for Kumbh Mela. Very different, right? The moon is not considered for Kumbh Mela. Sun and Jupiter. Right? So sun is in Aries and Jupiter in Aquarius or Leo. This is the condition for Kumbh Mela. Or sun in Capricorn and Jupiter in either Taurus or Scorpio. So this year, for instance, when sun was in Capricorn and Jupiter was in Taurus, was when we had this Mahakumbh, right? But in this case, even the moon was considered, and that's why it became a very auspicious time for this Mahakumbh. Divyanshi, the location depends on each of these four conditions, right? First condition, sun in Aries, Jupiter in Taurus, Jupiter in Aquarius is a certain location. Sun in Aries, Jupiter in Leo is a different location. This time we had sun in Capricorn and Jupiter in Taurus, and that makes it Prayagraj, right? Otherwise, it is Haridwar, Nasik, or Ujjain. These are the four locations. Now, Jupiter is currently in Taurus. In a few months, Jupiter will move into Gemini. But look at the conditions here. Gemini is not featuring. Jupiter in Gemini does not lead to a Kumbh. When Jupiter comes into Cancer, still no Kumbh Mela. When Jupiter comes into Leo, that means 1 to 3 years later, then we have one condition satisfied, Jupiter in Leo. In that year, when the sun enters Aries, we have a Mahakumbh. So this happens in 2028, right? When Jupiter is in Leo and the sun enters Aries. And look at this, the moon is not considered over here. It's Sun and Jupiter. And very interestingly, both of them are from the same camp, right? Sun and Jupiter are friends. And over here, they are making a trine. Yeah, they are in the 1-5-5-9 disposition, very auspicious, right? So it's almost like it's either 5-9 or one is in the 11th from the other. Very auspicious positions for one planet in favor of the other. Yeah, Divyanshi. So the four locations, Haridwar, Nasik, Ujjain, and Prayagraj, it is said that this is where, after the churning of the ocean, when the Amrit comes up, according to legend, the Devas and the Asuras start fighting for it, and the pot breaks. And when that pot breaks, that Amrit falls apparently in these four locations. So that is why these four locations are very auspicious for Kumbh Mela. It's also, the rivers are there in these locations. But why this particular combination leads to a certain location, I don't know. It's just what is stated in the scriptures. So, yes, this is what I have in terms of festivals. I'll be happy to hear your thoughts. I'll be happy to get any questions. Very basic introduction to the South Indian chart and to astronomy, right? Using astronomy for Indian festivals. We go into much more detail in my one-year program, which is starting in 2 weeks, right? Just to summarize, almost all festivals are based on these: the sun and moon, masa, nakshatra, paksha, and tithi. And most importantly, if you're looking at any calendar, distinguish between the two calendars, right? Whether it is Purnimanta or Amantamanta calendar, right? And if something like this interests you, my next program is beginning from May. Yeah, it's going to be 2 hours a week online. We'll have 6 retreats apart than the online classes. And we cover all of these, almost everything that I've spoken in this webinar: astronomy, astrology, philosophy, and mythology. All of this comes together in this one-year program. That's what I had to share. I'll be happy to take questions or to hear your thoughts.